Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video and welcome to our desktop and of course the next step in our Linux journey. And we're going to continue learning about package management and the next evolution of package management, which is of course DNF. Now, before we jump into things, make sure you go ahead and give me a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified when I upload new videos to the channel. And share this, of course, with a family member or a friend, especially those who are interested in learning about tech. Specifically, they want to start their Linux journey. Now, if you guys are interested in talking to me about tech at all, links will be in the description for my calendar. There you'll find the ability to book time on my calendar and be able to speak with me one-on-one about tech or anything in general, actually. So I open myself up to you guys. But by the way, those spots fill up very, very quickly. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. And by the way, guys, here we are on our RHEL 8 box, and we're going to learn all about package management, specifically with DNF. And in our previous videos, you have learned using RPM and also as well Yum. And remember, RPM is your low-level package management. Then we started being a little bit fancy and added some extra features like dependency management, which of course is Yum. And then now when we think of DNF, DNF really is your next iteration of Yum. And so essentially it provides a lot of upgrades, and I won't go into details as to what those upgrades are because that'll be a really nerdy and technical videos. Remember, our videos really focus on the value. What are the high level things that we need to know? And if we really want to deep dive into those things, you can always go ahead and use the man command in order to do man DNF and read a little bit more about DNF and exactly what was changed from Yum to DNF because they do a very good job of documenting all this stuff here. Now let's go ahead and quit out of this, but we're going to, again, go over some of the same commands that we learned in our previous videos because they also apply here. And again, as I mentioned in the previous video, when you are actually using Yum, it's actually pointing to DNF. DNF is really doing the work under the hood. And the interesting thing though, if you're asking me, hey, why would I want to stick around to the end now if it was the same thing as the last video? Well, I'll tell you what, you definitely want to stick to the end because I am actually going to show you some really cool features I didn't show you in the previous video. So let's jump into things and let's go ahead and say, hey, what version of DNF are we running? So let's elevate our privileges and just say sudo DNF -- version. And we can see here that we have version 4.7.0 running on our RHEL 8 box. So that seems pretty simple enough. Now, how do we go ahead and search for packages? So let's do a sudo DNF search. And by the way, this will search for packages within your repositories. And I mentioned this in prior videos. You need to have your RHEL box enabled in order to be able to search those repositories. If your RHEL box is not enabled, the repositories will be disabled by default and you can't see anything by searching. So you definitely want to make sure that your repositories are enabled so that way you can go ahead and search. So let's search for Python packages and see what we get. So there you go. You got a whole list of packages that have a hit with the word Python in it. And you can see here that it tells you a summary of matched Python packages. And it even tells you a little bit more up here, right? There's a lot more Python hits that we have. So you can actually keep scrolling and see all of these different packages. And typically they'll give you the package name with, of course, a little summary of what it is. But if you want to go a little bit deeper and you want to figure out exactly what a particular package is, I'm going to go ahead and copy this Python 3 Shapely package, right? So that's a copy. And let's go ahead and go all the way down now. And we're going to do a sudo DNF info. And then let's copy the package name here. And we can run this command to find out some additional information on that particular package. So there you go. You're actually seeing the name of the package, the version, release, your architecture, so on and so forth. Even this description here, and it tells you it's a package for creation, manipulation, and analysis of geometry objects. So moving forward now, one of the quick things that I want to show you guys with DNF is how do we go ahead and install packages? And in other videos, I showed you how to do that, especially when we were leveraging our LibreOffice package. So let's go into our downloads directory and our LibreOffice directory. And then of course, version 25811. And let's go into our RPMs directory, which has all the RPMs for LibreOffice. So let's go ahead and do a sudo DNF install, followed by a wildcard, which matches all different names here, right? So it can be anything here. But the interesting thing is I'm going to do a .rpm. So essentially it can be any name as long as it matches a .rpm. So I am essentially saying, hey, go ahead and install all the packages within this directory. So let's do a -y, so that way I can say, you know what, install the packages, say yes to everything, and don't bother asking me for a yes or a no. So let's run this command and see what we get. All right, awesome. And just like that, our packages for LibreOffice was installed. So I can go ahead and under activities, go under show applications, and you can see all the LibreOffice packages that are being installed, or should I say have been installed. And if we go ahead and run LibreOffice, you can see here that LibreOffice is running. So let's go ahead and hit writer. So that way we can go ahead and type a document out. And by the way, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. All right, so really cool stuff here. Let's go ahead and hit File and exit LibreOffice. I don't want to save my document, so we can get rid of that. So now how do we go ahead and remove this LibreOffice that we just installed? And it's as easy as saying, hey, sudo DNF remove, and we're going to go ahead and remove the LibreOffice package. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this package here. And if you notice, guys, I'm actually removing the big package, or the entire package that is 825.8.1.1.1, right? That package actually has dependencies on all the other ones. And after you've been doing this a while, you can kind of figure it out. But if you happen to pick the wrong one, DNF will help you resolve the packages, and it'll help you remove all these things. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a -y for yes. And we're going to see here that it's going to say, hey, we're going to uninstall all these packages that we just installed for LibreOffice. And if I go back to activities now and do show applications, you can see that LibreOffice is gone entirely. Pretty cool there. Now, real quickly, before we move on, just to recap here, I already showed you guys how to install and remove packages, showed you how to search for packages and how to find additional information. Plus, we also looked at the version of DNF. But now let's focus a little bit on how do we go ahead and update packages on the system. So similar to our previous videos, we can elevate our privileges and we can do a DNF update. And let's go ahead and take a look at what updates are available for us. And it's going to ask us whether we want to update those packages or not. And you see here that there are 688 packages with a 1.8 gig total file size for all these packages. And it says, hey, is this okay? Yes or no. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit no because I don't want you guys to see paint dry. That's not going to be any fun. So let's just hit no here. And one other command that I want to show you is, instead of update, you can also do the upgrade command. And let's take a look at what that is. So install 33, upgrade 688. It looks like this is the same command as before. I'm seeing the same total download size of 1.8 gigs. And by the way, guys, there's a big difference between update and upgrade. And if you haven't seen my last video, I've talked about this before, but update is we're going to apply updates as in bug fixes, those kinds of things. Upgrade is really meant for taking you from one major operating system, which is say RHEL 8, to another major operating system, which is RHEL 9. And you might be asking at this point, well, it's doing the same command. Why aren't we just upgrading from RHEL 8 to RHEL 9? And part of that process of upgrading, you have to make sure that all your packages get to a point where you can make that leap from 8 to 9. And so when you're using the upgrade command, it's inherently upgrading the packages, so that way it prepares you for the next revision of RHEL, which is RHEL 9, specifically since we're on 8. So it's a big difference between update and upgrade. And if you do upgrade enough, you'll see that you'll eventually get on RHEL 9, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and hit no here because, again, we're not going to watch paint dry. And that is a quick run through of how you can see what updates are available for your system. All right, so let's talk a little bit about listing packages. What do we have available for us? So we can go ahead and do the first thing, which is sudo to elevate our privileges, DNF list. And let's go ahead and say installed to see what we have installed on a machine. And you can see a list of packages. So to our left, we see the package name. In the middle column, you can see the version. And of course, on the last column, the far right, you're actually seeing the repository where it came from. So that is pretty cool. Another thing that we can do with that list command is we can do sudo DNF list available. And if we run this command, it shows us all the available packages for our particular machine. And by the way, that's a lot of packages there. And similar to how we saw before in the other output, you have your package name followed by the version, which is the middle column. And of course, the last column is your repository. I'm kind of curious to see how many packages are available for this particular machine. So we can go ahead and run the previous command along with word count -L to count the number of lines. And I'm curious to see how many packages are available for this RHEL 8 box. Holy smokes, 17,220 packages that are available for us to install. That's a lot of packages between all these repositories. All right, so moving on, if we were to do a sudo DNF list updates, we can see what available updates are for this RHEL box. And it shows us all those available updates. And of course, if I were to run the previous command and pipe that into a WC for a word count, I can go ahead and take a look at all the available updates for this RHEL 8 box. And we have 696 updates. Pretty cool. All right, so that's a little stroll on how we use list with DNF. Let's move on to the next item. And the next item on the list is working with repositories. So if I want to go ahead and take a look at repos, I can go ahead and do a sudo DNF repo list. You can see that it's going and taking a look at the available repositories for this particular machine. If I'm interested in disabling or enabling some of these repositories that are here, I can go ahead and use the same command as before, which is sudo DNF repo list, and then I can do a -- disable repo, and let's give it a repo that we want to be able to disable. And let's say I'm not interested in leveraging or using the Azure-CLI repo. I can go ahead and copy and paste that here. And as you just saw, the Azure CLI repo was disabled. Pretty cool. Now the opposite, of course, can happen if we want to enable it. You just get rid of the disabled. And let's go ahead and type enable here. And so you have sudo DNF repo list -- enable repo, and then you have the Azure CLI. And then of course, that repo is finally back here. So as you're seeing between the previous output, the Azure CLI repo wasn't there. And then of course, I disabled it. And then after using the enable repo command, you're seeing now that the Azure CLI repository is back in the picture. Now, by the way, guys, I haven't shown you in either the previous video or in this video how you go about adding additional repositories. So for those people who are watching my channel and maybe you're a little ahead compared to others, put in the comments below how you go ahead and add an additional repository. I'm curious to see what answers I will get. Anyways, moving forward now, let's go on to the next part of our DNF journey here is let's take a look at the histories or the history that we've been doing with that DNF command. So if I were to do a sudo DNF history, so here we have a list of all the history that is available with that DNF command. And it's pretty cool because on the left, you have your ID, which shows you the numbers, right? And then you have the command that was run, followed by the date and the time, and then of course the action. So as you can see, we previously actually removed LibreOffice, and the 27 is the latest ID that we have here. So it's actually pretty cool. You can do something very, very cool with this information here. So let's go ahead and do the undo command. And the undo command allows us to take a look at a specific command that we ran in the past and undo that specific one. In number 20, we actually installed E.T.F. And remember, if I go under activities and show applications, here is your HTOP application. And it's nothing more than the terminal that comes up with fancy colors that shows us our processes that are running, how much memory is being used, the load on the system, all kinds of goodies. We can actually go ahead and remove this application just by undoing what we've run in the history, which is of course installing it, so which is number 20. So essentially I can go and run the command sudo DNF history undo followed by the ID number, which is number 20. So essentially it says install HTOP, and if we're undoing it, we're removing it. So let's go ahead and do a 20 followed by a -y for yes, which means don't ask me, just go ahead and do it. So let's run this command and see what we actually get. And as you're seeing, it is actually going ahead and removing HTOP, which it did. So if I go under activities and if I go under application, HTOP is no longer there. And of course, you can leverage this again. So if I were to do a sudo DNF history, you can see that the latest thing that we did was undoing number 20. And number 20, of course, was, hey, I want you to remove HTOP because number 20 was installing it. You're going to undo it. Now, the funny thing is you can continue to build on this. So you can undo the last undo. Kind of interesting. So if we were to do a sudo DNF history undo, and we're going to undo the latest, which was number 28, and we're going to hit a -y for yes, essentially what that means is go ahead and install my HTOP again. So we install HTOP, we undo that, which means remove, and then when you undo the last undo, which means put it back. Kind of interesting. So let's hit yes on that and let it do its thing, and you're going to see that it's going to install HTOP, which there it goes. And of course, once it's done, we can verify by going under activities, show applications, and you can see that HTOP is back in our machine again. So that's interesting and pretty cool. So let's go ahead and quit out of this. I showed you guys a lot of the things that we were doing before, and thank you for hanging in there with me because now we're going to build this all together, and I'll actually give you guys one really cool thing that I didn't show you before, and just for sticking with me this long, I greatly appreciate it. But I'm going to show you guys how to go ahead and use a special tool called group install. And so the interesting thing about group install is it allows you to install a group of packages together, so that way you don't have to go ahead and install all the stuff one by one, because there's certain groups of packages that are necessary in order to get things done. And one of the ones that is very, very important, and people don't know this, is what's called server with a GUI. So real quickly, server with a GUI is just a collection of packages, and it allows this GUI that you see here to actually work. And in the world of Linux, actually, it is so customizable that it allows you to either remove this GUI or keep it on, so that way you can essentially point and click. Now you may be asking, well, why would I want to remove this GUI? Well, the interesting thing is in the Linux world, it allows you to fully customize your machine. And let's say, for example, you have a critical application that runs on your machine, and it actually doesn't even require to have a GUI in order to administer it on a computer. You want your resources going to that application, or do you want it split between running this GUI and running your application? And that is the beauty and the power of Linux. You can literally just get rid of the things you don't need, which is, hey, I can administer this machine without having a graphical user interface or a GUI, and let's put all of those resources towards the application. So let me show you guys on how to do that. So in this particular case, we can go ahead and say sudo DNF group remove. And why remove? Well, because the GUI is already running. That's what you guys are seeing, right? All this point and click stuff, that is a GUI. So essentially the package is already here and we have to remove it. So we can do a double quote and say server with GUI and close it with a double quote again, and followed by a -y for a yes. So meaning go ahead and do your thing. Don't ask me. I'm fine with you removing all of these packages. And let's go ahead and hit an enter on this and see what we get. So it's literally going ahead now and removing, and I don't know if you saw that, but it was very quick, 1.1 gigs worth of packages. So there's 343 total packages, 1.1 gigs worth of that. And so not only do you free up hard drive space, but you also go ahead and get rid of all the horsepower that is running this particular GUI. So essentially now all of that horsepower, meaning CPU, RAM, all of that now can go to running the things that matter to you most, which is, let's say, an application. And in fact, actually, I can go ahead and scroll up a little bit more here. And here you go. I actually brought it up for you guys because I wanted you to see it real quickly. But 343 total packages, and you're going to free up 1.1 gig worth of total space. And it shows you right now that it removed the environment called server with a GUI, and it removed a couple of other groups. So really cool how it handled all of that. So now here's the interesting thing. Let's go ahead and do a reboot and see what we get. So after we go ahead and reboot the machine, we are presented with this following item here, which is actually our login screen. And by the way, are you guys noticing something? I don't have a GUI anymore. Holy smokes. It literally just tells me the version of RHEL that I'm running, 8.7. It shows me my kernel version, and that's all I get. So essentially now my hardware is freed up from running a GUI, and all of that resource goes back to the computer where it can go ahead and run critical applications instead of just running a GUI that is really not needed for system administrators of Linux. And this is one of the really cool things that differentiates Linux from Windows. Windows, you can't really get rid of that GUI. It's sort of the foundations. And so when people say, hey, what's so special about Linux? And now you know that you can leverage the resources in order to run your work instead of making just the operating system run. And so when you hear people say that Linux is typically lightweight compared to Windows, this is an example of what they mean by that. So how do we go ahead and bring the GUI back? So let's go ahead and log in here. So we're back in the system now and we're logged in. And as you can see, I can continue to work with it, but it looks a little different than before, right? But let's go ahead and bring up our GUI now. So I can do a sudo DNF group install. And let's go ahead and open the double quotes server with GUI, close those double quotes, space -y for yes. And again, we're just going to reverse what we were doing before. And now we're going to install all those packages again. And if memory serves me correctly, it was 1.1 gig. So let's go ahead and hit yes here. In fact, actually, I'm going to take out the -y because I don't want it to go real quickly. I want to make sure that it is that 1.1 gigs. But let's go ahead and see what it tells us. So this time around, as last time it removed 1.1 gigs, it's actually going to download 1.5 gigs. And you're seeing here that it's going to install server with the GUI. So that means you're going to get BaseX, container management, core fonts, so on and so forth, and all those additional packages. So essentially, you're getting a whole group of packages, 1.5 gigs worth. So I'm going to hit yes here, and we're just going to wait for all this to complete now. All right, guys, and just like that, after what seemed like a long process, our packages for a server with a GUI has been installed. So before we actually reboot the machine, there is one particular thing that we need to do in order to make sure that we have the GUI enabled when the computer actually reboots. And by the way, I forgot to mention that when you are removing the server with the GUI, there was a command that I actually ran that I didn't show you guys, and unfortunately, I should have. But let me show you real quickly what that command is, and that is saying, hey, we're going to disable the GUI. You can see here that I ran this command, which was the sudo systemctl set default, and I set the multi-user.target. And essentially what that does is it disables the GUI. So now we're going to have to do the inverse of this, and we're going to have to enable the GUI, and we're going to do a reboot. So remember, when you were removing the packages, and once you're done removing the packages, run this command, and this will disable your GUI. Now that we've installed the packages and before we reboot, we're going to enable the GUI now. So we're going to have to do the opposite of this. So in order to do that, we keep the sudo systemctl set default the same, except we take out the last portion and we do graphical target, graphical dot target, should I say, hit enter on this. And of course, we can do a reboot now, and we just wait for the machine to come back up with our GUI. So let's give that a try. All right, so now we just log in, and just like that, we're back into our desktop. And you see here we have our terminal, of course. And of course, the GUI is working again, so we can see all the graphical user interface, plus on top of that, applications, a lot of point and click, which is exactly what we were looking for. So anyways, guys, let's take a pause there. You certainly learned a lot. Hopefully this really helped you out. And again, I say this in every single one of my videos. If you appreciate my content and it's helping you out a lot, make sure you give me a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified whenever I upload new videos to the channel. And of course, share this with a family member or a friend so that way they can also learn about tech. And by the way, guys, you certainly learned a lot. Now you know how to go ahead and remove these packages for the GUI, especially on a rel box. So take the commands, go play with it, remove those packages, add them back on. Have a good time with it because it's really going to build up those skills that you're going to need as you continue this journey. So anyways, guys, love you all. I appreciate you all. Thank you for staying with me this long. And before we head out, of course, if you don't want to wait for my next video, YouTube thinks this one popping up on screen is just for you. So go ahead and give that a watch. And until the next time, guys, I'll see you all in the next one.